And so, to mark the occasion, I have a Chris Paget Christmas story to tell, where Chris Paget created one of the most awkward Christmas moments that I've ever had. We had an end of the year, end of the semester life group leaders Christmas party, and Mark Buckner was my college pastor. He's now a pastor in Antioch, Boston. If you know Mark Buckner, he's an intense dude. Loves the Lord, and you look at him and you're like, please don't see through me and tell me what's going on. And so we had a Christmas party at Mark Buckner's house. All the college life group leaders are there, and Chris Paget was in charge of games. And so he said, everyone bring something for a white elephant party. Everybody knows white elephant party. Everybody brings something, and then it's like, number one, you come and you can get a new gift. Then you can start stealing gifts. If you're like, I don't love mine, I can go steal somebody else's. And it's a lot of chaos. And normally, when you do a white elephant party, there's a couple of rules. You might set a limit. A thing can only be stolen 3 times or whatever. Paget decided no rules at all. This is going to go amazing. And you pair that with the fact that it's a college life group leaders Christmas party, and most of us brought garbage. So I literally brought, I think it was like a bag of flour, stopped by the H-E-B on the way there and wrapped it up. Joke's on you, bro. And most people had stuff like that. Most of the stuff was like literally garbage. And there were a couple really good things. So guess what happened? A couple of people figured it out, and they ended up with the 3 good things. And if somebody came and stole one of the good things, that person would just go steal another good thing. That person would get up and steal it back. And it was just a matter of the will of these 3 people saying, we'll just do this all night. And everybody else eventually just giving up and being like, okay, give me the bag of flour, like whatever. I'm not going to fight this. And it goes on, and I'm kind of like, I'm not part of the 3 people, but my roommate is. This is the nicest person you would ever meet in the world. His name was Nassim. Nassim gets in this group, and they're like getting their 3 things. And I'm talking a little trash, like they're cheating, but there's no rules. And eventually, somebody comes and takes Nassim's thing, and Nassim gets up to go to his buddy and take it back and initiate the stealing cycle. And Mark Buckner, the most intense person you've ever met, as my friend is getting up and he's like walking across the room, he goes, stop it. That's not very gracious. I mean, he says kind of the nicest way to say it, but it's coming from Mark Buckner, and Nassim wanted to melt into the earth. I mean, he's standing there like, I am so sorry about everything I've ever done in my life, and I have no idea what got me here to this moment, but it was obviously a mistake. Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. But I mean, just a moment where we all go, what a great ending to the life group leader Christmas party. And that's what one of the verses I'm about to read is going to feel like. So we're celebrating Advent. As you know, there's like a series of themes on Advent. And Andrew texted me probably like 2 months ago and was like, hey, I'm doing the Advent calendar. Does one of these topics sound good? And there was a list of topics. And in the text, I even made a joke. I said, I have a lot of peace about doing the second week, which is peace. That's where we are today. I made the joke about it. And yet somehow in my brain, I thought, I'm preaching about hope. And I thought that until shockingly recently. So I didn't find out last week when Andrew started talking about hope, but I found out a few days before that. I looked back at the text and I was like, wow, this is not about hope at all. I read a book about hope, like in anticipation. Like I was like, I'm getting ready. I'm reading a whole book. Aaron and I went to Vienna, Austria, not to prep for the sermon, but we were there and we led a whole kids ministry. The theme was unshakable hope. So, hard pivot, here we are. It's Sunday the 8th, and I'm preaching about peace. So if at any moment you're like, it feels like you just kind of threw this together, it's not the most inaccurate assessment ever. But I decided, okay, if I'm talking about peace, I need to go look in the Bible, and I bet there's a verse that talks about how Jesus came to bring peace. And so I found this verse, and it's Luke 12. The TV's not working. TV's working! It's a Christmas miracle. Okay. And there's something in this passage about peace, so I was like, this will work great. So let's read it here together. I have come to bring fire. Okay, well, but peace is coming. This is a long passage. On the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. We'll go to the next part. But I have a baptism to undergo, and what constraints I am under until it is completed. It's intense. This is not the Christmasiest thing Jesus ever said, but we're coming. Do you think I came to bring peace on earth? Ouch. I mean, you talk about the moment I look back and said, I'm not talking about hope. This is how I felt. Like, okay, maybe there's not a verse like that. Jesus says, no, I tell you, I came to bring division. And then he goes on, we can read this from now on, there will be 5 in one family divided against each other. This sounds exactly like our house every day. 3 against 2, 2 against 3. They will be divided. Father against son, son against father, mother against daughter. I mean, literally, Jesus is in our house. Daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. Division. I came not to bring peace, but division. Merry Christmas. So here we are. It feels tense to us when people aren't getting along. Sometimes we say, I just want peace. But what we mean is, my kids are arguing about Legos. And I want the shallowest version of it. I want for people to just get along. And it's easy sometimes to tie that to peace and say, okay, this is peace. So, Jesus didn't kind of deliver there. We're looking for a nice verse about peace. Maybe Paul wrote a ton of the New Testament. Maybe he's got something awesome to say about peace. So I looked through, and Paul, let me give you some stats, okay? The word peace appears in the New Testament 93 times. 51 of them are from the letters by Paul. So a lot. Like, he says it a lot. Mostly, he says it like in the greetings of the letter and the salutations, and God of peace, and peace be with you, and peace, peace, peace. And he says some other things, but there's a few times where he talks about living at peace with others, getting along. Okay? And so let's read, there's 3 times that he says something like that. Let's read those. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Next one. Make every effort, try your best, dog, to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Next one. Make every effort to live in peace with everyone and be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. Let's go back to the first one, actually, because I want to talk about it. There's like 14 words on the screen, and most of it is him giving excuses. I don't know if you read a lot of Paul. He's a pretty intense dude. He says things like, pray without ceasing, avoid every kind of evil, be joyful always. He's not a guy that's dishing out like, try, see what happens, I don't know. We'll see. But when he talks about making peace with others, all 3 times he says it like this, like, just try, do your best, bro, I don't know. That'll count for something, I bet. It sounds the least like Paul of everything he writes in the whole deal. And I think he understands something. He understands that peace with others is not worth going after. We're going to talk about peace. I'm getting there, I promise. We're going to do a peace sermon. But everybody getting along, the odds that that's a good thing, if you look in the Bible, it's pretty low. Okay, here's some times in the Bible that everyone's getting along. There's one time where they build this awesome tower. They're like, guys, what if we all built a tower up to God? And God looked at the tower and was like, oh, y'all need Jesus so bad. And that's why we speak different languages, because they all got along for this moment. There was one time when almost everyone was getting along. Almost everyone agreed on how the world should be, and there was just one guy who didn't. His name was Noah. Everybody else got wiped out. There's another time they get along. Israel decides, man, you know what we all agree on is we all think we need a king. And God's like, oh, you so don't need a king. Who do you want to be the king? Like, that guy. And it's Saul. They miss again. They also get along almost every time that they're about to get wiped out by somebody, because they're like, let's put up some poles to worship some idols. And everybody is, let's do it. Who's got it better than us? Getting along does not yield peace because we are utter fools. Okay? There's not a Mark Twain quote like this, but there should be. The scariest thing in the world is when a bunch of fools agree on something. Right? Because that's reality. We are so foolish. And I'm talking like, raise your hand, everybody. We want the dumbest things in the world. And apart from Christ, we are so foolish. And when people start going, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You got a really good point. 9 times out of 10, they are saying something that if it's not evil, it's just dumb. We are so foolish, right? And so the reason that so much of the time getting along doesn't really get anywhere great is because we are just so dumb. The other reason is we are at war within ourselves. We can't have peace because not a single one of us has peace. And James says this. Let's pull up James. James says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? We need to put this in our house somewhere prominent. If one of you had any kind of peace inside of you, you could find a way to get to peace. And if all of you had something inside of you that was solid and secure and not divided and at war, this would go pretty well. The peace between us is just the natural, unavoidable fruit of people who are at peace. How many of us feel this? Desires that battle within you? The hardest thing is when you want two things. If you want one thing, you know exactly what to do. It might be difficult. It might take a lot, but you know exactly what to do. But the hardest thing is when you want two things. So I'm preaching this morning, and my wife tells the kids, Daddy's preaching. If you want to come stay in the big church, Daddy's preaching. And Michael's like, I want to, but I also want to go play with Joshie in the elementary. So she had to text the Zombraggers and say, Michael needs to know if Joshie's going to be there. And you'll notice neither of them are in the room, which is fine. I'm JD's kid's favorite preacher. I don't need to be my kid's favorite preacher. But what is hard, what creates tension, is when we want two things. So I'll give you some examples. I really want quality time with my family. I want to be present and listen and talk and share. I also, if I'm honest, I want my fantasy football team to win this week. It's a struggle. It's a real struggle. I got to check in. I got an injury last night. Found out Kenneth Walker out. That's a silly one. A lot of us who wants to share the gospel and tell people about Jesus, have people come to know Jesus? But raise your hand if you also you really care what people think about you. That's a war. That's a war within us, right? It's me wanting two things, and the reality is, I gotta pick one. And I'm gonna eventually I will pick one, even if it's subtle and not a big, bold choice. I'm gonna drift towards one, or I'm gonna just feel this constant angst and be not at peace. We're at war within ourselves. So, why on earth did they ask me to talk about peace when I just told you what's not peace for however long we've been going? Because peace is part of the promise of God. And so we're going to read right now a very Christmassy sounding passage. It does talk about peace. This is Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. For to us, and this is written like hundreds of years before Jesus. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Love it. Who's in? Love it. Okay, I want to look at just those four names. And I want to ask and just suggest today, what if it's a package deal? what if the reason I'm not experiencing all of the peace that God has for me and all of this lovely, just understanding what is the one thing that matters to me, what if the reason is that I'm not accepting that He's a wonderful counselor? And I'm taking counsel from all kinds of places that are not what God would come and say. I mentioned how foolish we are earlier today, and it's been a focus of mine this year, is the wisdom of God. And so I've read Proverbs this year probably more than any other book of the Bible. I've been reading Aesop's Fables. God didn't write that, but it's interesting, just the wisdom of, hundreds of years of human civilization. And a lot of times what's been really interesting is reading either one of those with my two boys. And I'll read an Aesop's Fable, or I'll read a section of Proverbs, and I'll say, what's that? What is it all about? What's happening here? And getting them to unpack it and go, it's like this is, every one of them, they'll have some interesting insight, and we'll come back to, let's think about you guys in the fight y'all had yesterday. Does this do anything? Yeah, man, that's actually a big deal. And it's way better than me lecturing them and talking about how Legos are not God, which they've heard that speech a lot of times. But we're talking just what is the wisdom of God? What does God have to say here? And I think whether we know it or not, and our culture is so hungry for wisdom. There is more talking than there has ever been in human history at once. And everybody's got something to say and talk about. And if you zoom out and go, God, what are you saying here? It's such foolishness so much of the time, and it's because we aren't anchored on a wonderful counselor. There is somebody who knows. There is somebody who created you and understands everything about what's going on inside of you. And they created your spouse and your kids and your neighbors and the people you don't get along with. And He has something to say in every moment, in every situation, about how we can live in peace and bring peace to a situation. He is also mighty God, the God who fights against evil, the God who lives in a world where there is a right and a wrong, and draws hard lines and says, I am against that. It's not a bad idea, it is wrong. And when we come under that mighty God and say, war on my behalf, God, fight this battle. I don't know what to do here, but I know this is evil. I'm going to run from it and run to you. We open the door to something. He is everlasting Father. There's a lot in that word Father, right? We could do a whole series on Father. But let me say, in our house, one of the things when something's not going well, and people are talking back and all kinds of hey, go do this. Well, but the thing is, oh man, I don't care. The thing is nothing, right? And so one of the things I will do when that whole kind of thing happens is I'll let it play out and I'll go, and scene. Okay, we're going to run it back, and this time your line is, yes, Mommy, yes, Daddy, and that's it. I don't need you to expound. Just do that, right? Because what part of it is helping them understand and teaching what it is to be under authority, right? Under authority is my boss at work, I am under authority. She says, hey, send this email, and it needs to look like this. Okay, that's what I'm doing, right? That's under authority. And a lot of times we think of it as just like it is with everyone we follow on social media. There's some good ideas, there's some bad ideas. I'll kind of pick and choose, and I'll kind of figure my own way. And if He is everlasting Father, that means forever, from now until forever, I'm under His authority. And He loves me. It's a father. It's not a military general. It's a father who loves me and wants my best and cares about me. But that doesn't mean He always cares what I think about His next idea. Sometimes my line is, yes, God. And I might have other but the thing, no, the thing is nothing. The thing is, your line is, yes, God. Let me submit and do what God's wanting to do. So that's the first three. And what I'm proposing today is this is a package deal. When you're living in a way where this is true, and this is true, and this is true, this is going to happen. Peace is the fruit of living under God's rule and reign. And what would it look like if my desires weren't at war within me? What if I really actually wanted one thing? this was a few months ago, but I still remember it vividly. We were praying at dinner. We were having dinner, and Natalie said, I want to pray tonight. Natalie's 4. Great. And Natalie's prayers are always a journey. But she said, God, I pray that you would have a good day. That's sweet. Doesn't that just sound sweet? And I wrote it down. I've been thinking about it for months. Like, what does that mean? What would that mean if my whole focus was not on me having a good day? What does a good day for God look like? God's not going to be sad or depressed at the end of the day. God's going to be all right. Okay, we're not thinking like that. What is a day that God looks at and goes, yes, you honored me today? What if I left my house or got on my Zoom for the day or whatever, and my focus was not on my good day, but God's good day and God's good outcome? That's a major perspective shift, right? Something happens, and instead of going, I don't like that, I'm questioning, how does that work out for God and what God's trying to do? Because there's things that happen that, honestly, that's not the way I would pick that. But what if my question was, what's God up to? How can this honor God? How have I just been put in a situation where my response can make this day great for God? That's wanting one thing. So, in Isaiah, the next verse, of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. Can you go back to the first 9-7 part? Yes, perfect. Of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. He will reign on David's. Okay, good. That's good. Of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. But there will be a beginning, right? And for me, if I want to experience peace, the beginning of that is me going, God, I want to come under your rule. He is on the throne. That's the done deal, okay? He's not waiting for the vote to get counted in California. I think you're still working. Anyways, he is on the throne. That's a done deal, okay? But for me to live under and experience the fullness of his rule and reign, there is part of it that is me saying, I'm going to come under that. I'm going to accept that he is mighty counselor. Wonderful counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And as I accept that, things start to happen inside of me. I start to understand what it is to be at peace, to not be at war with myself, to not be at war with God, and have a peace between me and the creator of the universe, instead of me trying to get my way and ultimately being at war with him and his purposes in the earth. And as more and more territory comes under his wonderful counsel, this starts to happen not just in me, but between us. And the reality is, peace on earth will be the end. But it will happen and it will come about because every single person will have their knee bowed to one God. Everybody getting along when we're all foolish, chasing ridiculous things is not going to have a good outcome. Everybody coming under the same king who is good and wise and powerful and mighty has a very different result. And that is a meaningful, lasting, enduring peace. It's not Tower of Babel 2.0. It's God's kingdom manifest on earth. But it happens through every one of us coming under him. In Luke 12, what we read at the very beginning, where Jesus says, do you think I came to bring peace? No, but division. A little bit before that, it's got a series of conversations he's having with a really big crowd, and a guy raises his hand and says, Jesus, I got the God of the universe standing here imparting wisdom to us all. Could you convince my brother to give me half of the inheritance? And I imagine myself, when my kids are doing something, I'm upset, and I'm going, don't yell, don't yell. And I'm making this face, the same face Steve Sarkisian made right before halftime yesterday. He's standing on the sideline going, just gather yourself. Best to say nothing for a moment. But the guy asked that, and Jesus says, who made me judge between you guys? And then he gives him this, talk about like you're worshiping things instead of God. Who made me judge between you guys? And the answer was nobody had, but the answer could have been, I would like to make you judge, God. I would actually like to come under your authority. And when I come under your authority, I might stop asking this exact question. This question might become small in my eyes. But have you made him judge? You're asking him to adjudicate this conflict between people, and he's going, I don't know if I'm the judge over you guys. Sounds like you're over here. My kingdom's over this way. And then he comes right after that to come back and say, do you think I came to bring peace and help everybody just sort it out and get along? Now, I'm actually bringing division because I'm creating a kingdom that is going to look like this and sound like this, and everyone is welcome. But it's not going to move over to where you are. I'm going to ask you to come over under it. And that is what peace looks like, is saying, hey, I'm going to actually give up what I'm doing. I'm going to move over here and be under what God is doing. And I'll kind of tie this up with a really Christmassy story. I'm getting more Christmassy as I go. We started with Chris Padgett ruining everyone's Christmas. Moved along. Read a verse that sounded not very Christmassy at all, but now we're going to talk about a man named Simeon. And Simeon was a priest where Jesus is born. Spoiler alert, you guys, if you're here, we're celebrating Christmas. Jesus was born. And there's all kinds of stuff. This angel comes and tells Mary, hey, do you know how you're a virgin? You're going to have a lot of explaining to do because you are pregnant. And you're going to have birth, and this baby is going to be amazing. You should read it. Luke 2 is a great place to go. And Mary has a peace about it. God gives her this peace about it. She is able to come under and say, I'm excited. God has blessed me, and great things are going to happen. And they have this baby, and it's amazing, and angels come and shepherds come and go, this is the dude, this is it. I'm paraphrasing. And what it says is, after that, they had to go to the temple to have him circumcised and have this, ceremony. And the guy who was there at the temple was a man named Simeon. And Simeon had this prophesied over him years and years ago, that he would not die before he saw the Lord's Messiah. A big one, man. If you're prophesying over somebody, you better be pretty confident on that one. So he had that promise in his heart. And imagine, I think he was an older dude at this time, so the clock is ticking, and he's going, okay. And they bring Jesus in, and God revealed to him, this is the guy. This is it. And it said Simeon rejoiced and celebrated and said, this is God's anointed, and now I can go in peace. I'm at peace with myself. I've come under, God's had this purpose, and I got to be a part of that purpose. And just seeing that fulfilled gives me this sense of peace because I'm fully in God's will. I've gotten to this moment. God brought me here to this moment to see this thing happen. And that is a powerful, powerful peace. And when I prayed for this message, once I realized what this message was going to be about, and prayed for you guys, that's my prayer. That you would have the peace of Simeon, of understanding God is bringing things into my life. And as those things happen, whether they're really, really nice and easy or maybe harder circumstances, that we would have the peace of Simeon to go, I'm under the wonderful counsel of God, the mighty dominion of God, and I'm living in the peace of God.